at this point, I'm just want to get through the interview, make sure we're good on that before I start going live on anything in it. And then I don't know how you do what it is that you do in terms of promoting it. So
if you want to go live on Instagram, you can go live.
Okay. Well, if it's okay with you,
yeah.
Let me see if I can't set that up real quick.
Yeah. The more the merrier, Glenn.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But with all these technical situations, I said, let me just focus on one thing at a time.
You look good, sir. You look good.
Trying to make sure my tripod, I'm still doing a lot of makeshift with what I got going on, but we're getting there. That's why I understand. I used to use Skype at one point, and then it just didn't work for me anymore. And then I used Google Hangouts about a year and a half ago, and it was just so iffy. I said, I got to do something. And for me, I can't afford for it not to work.
Right. Especially with a lot of the video content you're doing.
Yeah, that's just the worst. Links got to work. Signals got to connect, all that good stuff, brother. Because if it don't, you're dead in the water.
Yeah.
All right, so let me move this in a little bit. Move my lighting up a little bit. I think what I might.
Oh. I knew you were going to wear your Maps hat, so I'm wearing my Cubs hat.
That's cool. It's cool. So you're out in Denver, but you're a Cubs fan.
I grew up in Chicago.
Got it. Let me see something. Yeah, I rarely go live on Instagram, but I'm trying to build that part of my situation up. So we'll see. Are we going to pretty much start as soon as you say the word?
Well, I'm.
You ready to go?
Ready to go with you.
All right, bro. Let me do this real quick.
Yeah. I thought about doing the same thing, but I want to focus on you, Glenn.
I get it. Here we go. All right. Let's do this.
It's funny that you were having these technical issues because I was having technical issues a couple weeks ago. A friend of mine is starting his own podcast using Anchor, and I had problems upon problems upon problems with Anchor. And so
okay.
I feel your pain, sir. Feel your pain.
I was looking at Easy Webinar and some other things. I mean, I've tried a lot of different platforms. I've done a few webinars, and right now, for the money, I can't beat Zoom. It just really, it's never failed me. It works. I use it for all my coaching appointments,
right?
The whole bit, and I'm sold. I mean, they don't have to. Like, it's worth every dime for me.
If Zoom wants to sponsor our shows, that would be wonderful, wouldn't it, Glenn?
Yeah, I don't think I'm at the point where I have that kind of following yet for them to want to get involved in that. But at some point, yeah, absolutely, that would be amazing.
Well, we should petition that happening, that Zoom sponsor all of our products.
Yeah, that would be look, and let's just lean on them together, right?
Yeah, exactly. The more, the merrier.
All right, let's go ahead and go, man. Let's see what happens.
Speaking of more the merrier, I want to start with your hashtag of we all need some help.
Yep.
Right. Did that start because you needed help?
Well, no, actually, and it's right here on my logo. Hashtag we all need some help started as a closed Facebook group. I created a group that basically wanted to build a tribe of people who needed help in building healthy relationships. And that's the sort of the subtitle. And so when we created, what's up, Paul? Thanks for jumping in, man. Going live here. I don't go live often, but I'm excited to be featured on a podcast. Tommy, if you can just go ahead and just like introduced us and bring us in. Let's go ahead and get started. But we can talk about the hashtag piece all day long.
Well, on this episode of the podcast, I am honored and blessed to have Glenn P. Brooks Jr. on the show. And you and I have something in common other than being extremely handsome guys. I also am a junior as well, Glenn.
That's what's up, man. There are more than one of us running around.
Exactly. So going back to the first question, you're talking about, so you started a closed Facebook group.
Yeah.
But at what point did that hashtag or maybe it was more of a mantra?
Well,
how did that enter your life?
Well, I mean, from the very beginning, so let me just give you a quick background. So I've been married twice for 30 years. I've been married total over 30 years to two different women. Right. And the first time it was 12 years in a row. The second time has been now 19 years. And the challenge is that when I came to the end of that 12-year run, we got separated at 9 years in, and then it was just really rocky trying to figure out what we were going to do and how we were going to bring it together. And at that point, we had a son. We just had a son shortly after the separation. And for me, I knew that I was in a position where I didn't know what I was doing, but I didn't know how to fix it. And so the divorce finally happened. And I met up with a group of men actually who just filled a gap and filled a void. And it was a void of ignorance, I should say. I just didn't know what I didn't know.
So where did you find
this happened? This happened to be in my local church.
Okay.
And they had a very, very strong outreach ministry to build healthy community, healthy family. And for the first time in my life, you know, I was able to see what community looked like when done properly. When you're concerned about the natural growth of people, that looks like something. And so hashtag we all need some help sort of derived from the mindset that said, what was the difference between being married 12 years, it not working, it ending miserably in a divorce, which hence the whole blended family situation, because I got married again. And then now it's been 19 years in a row. And I can promise you the problems I had before are non-existent for all intents and purposes. The problems that I have now are new problems. And I had to ask myself, what was the difference, Glenn? You know, I'm a man of faith. I love God. I love his people. I love working in the trenches with people and from a ministry standpoint. But the difference wasn't God. The difference wasn't my faith, because my faith was the same. It had never changed. What made the huge difference was my community. And I think that most people don't really understand that what tribe or community really looks like. And when it works well, it is incredibly efficient in helping people to grow. And so that's where if hashtag we all need some help wins is what, you know, that's what sort of came of it. So for those of you guys who are jumping in on IG, Coach Rice, good to see you. Thanks, Tia, for jumping in. Paul, thank you for jumping in. I'm being interviewed on a podcast. Thomas Maloney, he runs a podcast on the blended family. And I'm just excited to be a guest on your show, Thomas. I appreciate you, man, for having me.
Oh, like I said earlier, I am honored and blessed. I had a guest on recently, Michael Laidler, and he was talking about his relationship with his dad was pretty non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
He was raised by his mom and grandmother. And one of the things he talked about, and this is why I really wanted to not only get you on this podcast, but also ask you this first question about needing help. Michael thought that he could do everything on his own. And it wasn't until later in life that he realized that he needed help. And one of my favorite quotes from him on the show was, even Jesus needed help. And you were live on Facebook yesterday, and that resonated with me. And I had to put that out there. And this is my understanding as a man, and also very similar to you, coaching other people. But it really does boil down to, and I don't want to just pick on the men right now, but it does seem that more and more men are afraid to ask for help. Is that a
100%.
deal as well?
100%. But that Tom, that has so many. There's so many reasons why that is the case. Number one, you're 100% correct. When it comes to asking for help, when it comes to needing help, when it comes to reaching out, men generally don't. And I think kind of it's for a number of reasons. One, culturally, we're built not to ask for help. When you think about how men function, it's in our DNA to handle it, right? I mean, to go out and make it happen. And if you do anything less than that, then somehow in your mind, you're less than a man. So you're not going to ask for help. And if you grew up like I did, where you're always fending for yourself, then you don't even know how to form the words. I don't even think that most men even recognize that crisis when this is too much for you, that you're not going to win. And unfortunately, what we do generally as men, we'll plow through it anyway, and we'll continue to fail and continue to fail more and more miserably. And then I think what winds up happens is we quit. We just decide. And unfortunately, in a family environment, it means I'll quit on my wife. I'll quit on my kids. I'll quit these different things. You got men who will change jobs like they change shoes, and rather than change them, they change the external when really it's internal. But unfortunately, because they've not come to that moment of crisis where it says, listen, I've got to do something different. And for me, I knew that I could not do my second marriage like I did my first and win. That much I knew.
So what changed? What was the aha moment, Glenn, of going, for example, when my wife and I, before we got married, she came to me and said, would you be willing to go to marriage counseling? And I always told her I was always the odd duck because, I had been in counseling. I've seen a therapist probably when I started, I was, 12, 13.
Yeah.
Because I've been very public about it. I've gone through many, many years of battling depression. And when my wife said to me, would you be willing to go to counseling? I'm like, heck yeah. Very similar situation, Glenn. I didn't want to go through what I had gone through my first marriage, and neither did my wife. She wanted us to start with a clean slate and, start off with a strong marriage.
Yep.
What was your aha moment of wanting to make this second marriage with you and Sherry the last marriage?
I think that for me, Tom's, one of the things that I think resonated for me is that I went through a painful divorce. And when I say painful, meaning I don't know if you've ever been in a place where something is slipping and you know you're wrong, but you don't know how to fix it. And so for me, my first marriage was coming unglued long before it did. And I knew that it was primarily me. I knew it was my selfishness. I knew it was my self-centeredness. I knew it was my drivenness. I knew it was my own desires to please me. But I didn't know how to fix that. And so therefore I didn't. And I just kept going along with life. But after the pain of going through that, and for me, it was, looking down in the eyes of a son and saying, you know what? I'm doing to him what my dad did to me. And I swore I wouldn't do that. And I think that's something that a lot of us as men, we don't want those same things to befall our kids. But unless you physically do something different, I promise you, you're going to get much of the same.
What does that mean, Glenn, that you didn't want to fall essentially through the same traps that you were going through with your son and what your dad did to you? What does that mean?
So let me back up for a second. So my parents divorced when I was 7. And my mom struggled big time raising us in South Baltimore by herself, working 2 and 3 different jobs, trying to figure it out. She was a seamstress, extremely, extremely talented one at that. But then she had a day job, and I just never saw her a lot. We were latchkey kids early in elementary school. I got bullied and beat up in our neighborhood all the time. And I just remember missing my father, just absolutely having this deep sinkhole of a feeling that said, where is he and why isn't he here? And if I talk about it long enough, I can get emotional. It's probably why I've written so passionately some of the books that I've written. And in the book, How I Got My Son Back, it's one of the books I've written. I outline what that looked like when your father is missing in action. And so I recognize really quickly that, Glenn, you are doing the same things that your dad did to you. And here was the crazy thing. I didn't learn that at his feet. In other words, he wasn't there to teach me that. So I was demonstrating or carrying out the things that he did without him being there to teach me. And so for me, I had to say something is wrong. I got to fix this. I don't know what it is. And I got to begin to work on. So like you, I went to therapy. I've gone to, God knows, I can't tell you how many counselors I've seen over the years to just help me wrap my mind around like what's wrong with me. You get what I mean?
Well, I was just reading an article on the website Fatherly, and it was a sad truth. And in this article, and I'll put in the show notes, was scientists have finally determined that if you have an absent father, then you are going to go through a life of living hell. And I'm sitting there going, really?
Yeah.
Scientists are now just discovering this? I mean, come on. I mean, and I'm sure your audience knows and my audience knows that if dads are not, I mean, the bottom line, Glenn, is if dads are not involved in their kids' lives, those kids, as you've learned, as I've learned, they miss out on a lot. They don't have what you were just talking about, that positive mirroring.
Yeah.
One of the greatest examples my dad ever gave me in a positive way was he was a chaperone on a field trip of mine when I was a little kid. And because of that life lesson, when my son was in grade school, anytime they needed a chaperone, I was always one of the first to sign up.
Right.
And I think, like you were saying, we learn at times good lessons from our dads, even though they might be absent.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we learn those bad habits. And like you were talking about, how we can just easily just repeat that same negative pattern.
100%.
And until, like you exactly said, until we realize it's not them, it's us, we're not going to change.
Yeah. No, 100%. And it's funny because when you say that, I thought I never will forget, my son was probably a year old, maybe going on somewhere between a year and 18 months. And I remember a friend of mine saying something quite directly to me. And he said to my face, he said, man, let me tell you something. If you don't do something different, you're going to continue to repeat everything that you've ever learned. Nothing is going to change for you. And you have to understand that this doesn't get hoped away. And I knew that I was going through some changes with my now ex-wife. And incidentally, we're great friends today because of change, because of work that we were able to do and recognize that needed to be done. And then you couple that with a will, and then magic happens at that particular point, because now you're able to put in work that, quite frankly, if you don't put that work in, you won't grow. I often tell people that when you stop growing, so does your relationship. And if you, as an individual, I don't care if it's you or her or you, however that looks, whoever stops growing at that particular point, that's when the relationship begins to fail. And unfortunately, most people do not recognize that sort of as it's happening. It's kind of a retrospect thing. So for me, I really had to just take some inventory, take this wisdom that was being given to me, recognize the signs, and say, you know what, if you want to do something, if you want something different, brother, you got to do something different.
Well, I'm happy you brought that up, because two things come to mind. One, I saw earlier today you had on Instagram a video, and you mentioned, and I swear you were talking to me personally, because you said you had, and I don't, and maybe this is my ego talking, Glenn, but maybe I wrote this to you. I don't know, but you said you received a message from somebody who had said that even after 10 years of divorce, the co-parenting still isn't working. And I'm going,
no, that was yours. That was actually yours. I didn't mention, no, that was you. That was absolutely, I was live yesterday, and you jumped on really quickly, and it was rolling so fast. I just caught the thing, and I didn't really see until it was after the fact that you in fact wrote that. And I resonated with that in a lot of ways, where as a coach, Thomas, it's really difficult as a coach to coach people who are clueless. And when I say clueless, meaning They are very much a part of the problem, but they don't see it. I don't blame them per se. But at the same time, I'm saying if you don't see that you are a part of this problem, solution will never come to you. So I get to coach parents who literally are going through the same thing over. It's like Groundhog Day. If you ever saw that movie, it's like, dude, until you do something drastically different, nothing is going to happen. And unfortunately, you get people that says, well, I did that, or I tried that. And it's coaches like me that says, well, what was that you tried? And how long did you do that? And what was, like, there's a reason why it still didn't work. And it's not necessarily because the method was wrong. It could have just been the fact that you just didn't do it in the right environment, or quite frankly, you didn't do it long enough. And so as a result, it's not going to stick.
Well, the reason why I wrote that was because I'll never forget, my mom told me, after her and my dad divorced, and I was 5 when they got divorced. And I always tell people, ironically, when myself and my former wife divorced, our son, I got to remember, our son, that's what a judge told me, our son, he too was 5. And so the story was, my mom told me that it took about 10 years for her and my dad to have a civil conversation. And matter of fact, my former wife and I, we cannot. I wrote this recently on I'm doing a series for the Good Men Project called God Pushed Me. One of the things I wrote was my former wife would rather sit in a chair on Mars than sit right next to me in a setting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're coming up on 10 years of still not being able to have a civil conversation. Everything I've tried, but everything for her, and in my opinion, there's a method to her madness, but everything has to be done through email, not texting, but email. But the other thing, I also want to bring up, you're talking about growing.
Yeah.
And I think I'm that idiot you were just talking about, because I see my wife growing. She has really come from leaps and bounds as far as when we were first dating, and things really bothered her from her former husband. And matter of fact, about 2 weeks ago, my youngest bonus daughter, who's 16, had her end of year basketball banquet. Not only did my wife and I attend, but my wife's former husband, the three of us sat together, and it was just like 3 friends just hanging out together.
Love it.
And this is because she has grown. And again, I think what you were just saying earlier really resonated with me, because I think I've hit, I don't want to say a plateau, but I think I've hit, my growing wall, and I need me to realize it is me that needs to step it up. And not to make this a therapy session here.
No. And I want to interject just really quickly on that one point, and we certainly can move on. But here's the deal. When you get to a place, I don't care whether it's your health, I don't care if it's your wealth, I don't care if it's a new job, career, I don't care if it's a relationship. If you've gotten to the place where you're not getting a return on your investment, you're either A, investing in the wrong thing, or B, you're not investing enough. Either way, you need a third party to help you navigate through that. I call that, for me, a coach. I've had several and still do have coaches that keep me accountable. And here's a huge difference. And I've gone through my share of therapy, not knocking any of it. It all has its place. But what I love about coaching, my job is to assess what you're going through, figure it out, help. And I ask a ton of questions. I'll figure out where you are. Then we determine where you want to be. Where do you want to go from here? What does that look like for you? And then my job is to draw up a game plan for you to execute. And then what I do then is hold you accountable to carrying out what you said you wanted. And unfortunately, what most people don't recognize is that growth only comes through accountability. You cannot grow apart from accountability. I'll give you a quick example. So you got the show, The Biggest Loser, right? And it's a quintessential example. Why is it that when they leave the show, many of them revert to who they were? Is it because they don't know any better? No. Is it because they don't know what to do? No. Is it because they don't know how to do it? Absolutely not. It is solely because they left the environment that made that possible. That incubator of the show was in fact that it incubated a new body. And what you don't replace when you leave the show is the community. One of the first things that I recognize when change needs to happen for me, I have to build a community around me to induce that or to push me through, because if I could do it by myself, brother, I would. Trust me. And a lot of times that's going to cost you, you know what I mean? In blood, sweat, tears, money, you name it. And most people, I promise you, most people don't want help. They want relief.
Well, I think in society now, we want the quick fix. We want the microwave.
100%. And I'm guilty. I mean, I'm not saying this aside from me. I've been guilty of years. I recently just started working with a nutritionist and a trainer because I'm trying to get somewhere in terms of my health. And I hadn't been able to get there before. I know what to do. I know how to do it. But the problem is there's nobody to keep their foot on my neck to make sure I get that done. Or
we can use, Simon Sinek's philosophy, the why.
Yes.
What was, in that situation for your health, you have to find your why. Is
Absolutely.
It because of your family? Is it because of your own health? I mean, there are things like that. But, it goes back to your hashtag. And that is, in retrospect, it's okay to ask for help.
100%.
And it's just sad that we know, like, to use your example, The Biggest Loser, once they leave the ranch, it's mental.
Yep.
Because like you were saying, they don't have that accountability partner anymore. And they feel that maybe, and I'm just guessing here, but maybe they just don't feel that it's okay to ask for help because, hey, I lost all this weight. I was on this fabulous TV show, and now I'm the man, I'm the woman. I don't need anybody's help, which is not necessarily true.
And I've had to learn, brother, to just, if I don't kill my ego will kill me.
Well, Dr. Wayne Dyer talked huge about having an egoectomy. That's the thing that we all need, is to get our egos totally removed when we're
Absolutely. And my why is so huge right now that the what doesn't matter. Like, what I got to go through doesn't matter anymore because my why is just significantly bigger than me. And so therefore it pushes me through windows that I normally couldn't get through by myself.
I want to talk about the latest book, and I'm super excited because this is you and your wife, Sherry.
Yeah.
Where is it? I'm
going to reach for it here.
Oh, here we go. All right. Was it
from broken to family to blended?
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
I couldn't let you struggle anymore.
I can't read my own handwriting.
By the time you raised up the glasses, bro, I said, "No, this brother needs some help. Let me help him out."
This is why I don't like doing video, because people will see.
It's okay.
My eyes are. So yeah, let's talk about the blended family, and I want to ponder a question before we go further, and I don't want you to answer just yet. But a lot of the guests on this podcast, I ask them the same question, and that question is: if the kids don't get along, do you continue dating? So I just want you to ponder on that question, because my wife and I, the backstory in that was, we said that if, because we dated for a good month and a half before we got our kids together. So my wife has 2 daughters, now 21 and 16, and I have my son who's 15.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I get different answers on this from many of the guests, but I just want you to think about the question, and then we'll go talking about the book. Is, again, if you're dating and each of you have kids, and if the kids don't get along, do you continue dating? So I'm gonna let you to stew on that, but let's talk about the book. How did you and Sherry put this book together? What was that aha moment that you two felt that you needed to create a blended family book?
Well, it really came from the need to educate people on the process. And when I say the need, as coaches, and we had written several books, we co-authored a couple books together prior to this. We wrote this one and our book on marriage really within 45 days of each other, really.
Wow.
But the reason why was because of the need. We kept seeing over and over again. I'll just loosely, if we throw out the statistics that on average, somewhere around 40 to 50% of first marriages end in divorce. On average, somewhere around 60 to 65% of second marriages end in divorce. And on average, about 74% plus third marriages end in divorce. What we're seeing is an epidemic of people who can't figure it out. And I honestly think that what's happening is that no one's deciding to either A, tell their story and educate people on how they've made the turns, or B, nobody cares, meaning people don't care to fix it. You get what I'm saying? They're okay with not fixing it. And so Sheree and I just kept seeing this need where we were either coaching couples. We do public speaking engagements all the time, particularly at churches that will bring us in and they'll do workshops. We had a church in Maryland that brought us in to do a blended family workshop because of the need they had at their local church. They were telling us that 90% of the marriages that they had in their church were blended families of some sort, like 90%. But when you think about the startling statistic of divorce, that's not far-fetched. I mean, just think about it. If 7 out of 10 third marriages, like these people are like they're trading up and it's not good, but it's for worse situations. And I think that we just felt impressed to say, you know what? We're not perfect, but we are winning. And I don't say that from an ego standpoint. When I define winning, what I'm defining winning as is you're not quitting. You're still in the game. You're actually digging in every time you find an obstacle that you can't overcome, and you're figuring it out. And things, if you look at it on a spectrum, they've increasingly got better over the years. And so if I turn around and look down the annals of time 19 years ago, where we are today versus then, are light years away. And I'm not just talking about Sheree and I'm talking about Deidre and Darren, our co-parents, and even with her and her, she was married twice before me. I was married once, and even her relationship. And so I characterize it this way. We went from there are three kinds of co-parenting relationships. There's one, the first one is that you ride or die. Y'all are friends. You're great friends. You go to the family functions together. There's no problem. You can do the outings together. You may even go on vacation together with the kids. That's just how y'all roll. You're good. Then you have the ones who are called associates. They got a business relationship. They're not friends, but they're not enemies. They can get things done and they can communicate effectively enough. But the truth is that they don't particularly hang out with each other. Then you have that third level of co-parent relationship, and that is that whole bleach and ammonia thing. It's just flat out toxic. It's a match waiting to go off, and something's going to blow up. It's a bad situation. Well, I've watched both Sheree and I go from 3 in one case with our one co-parenting situation to number 1, and then with the other number 2. And so I'm not here advocating that everybody's going to be friends. I'm not even saying that that's possible for everyone. I'm not dealing with that. But what I am saying is that when you look at the care of your kids and you look at what's most important, I'm going to always challenge you to grow. Either A, you grow by changing your circumstance, or B, you grow by changing your perspective. Either way, you've got to grow if those kids are going to benefit.
You know, one of the things you're talking about, you know, that I was thinking of is why people end up in a second or third or even more marriages. And from my understanding, a lot of times it just comes from, well, I got divorced once.
Yep.
No big deal. I can get divorced again. Instead of, like you were saying, you know, working at it,
yep.
you know, again, asking for help, finding, maybe going through your church or maybe finding a mentor type couple like you and Sheree. I mean, it's, you know, I was just reading another article about how therapists, do they advocate for divorce? And majority of them say no. That's not their decision. That's up to the couple.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, as toxic as a lot of relationships are, and you sit back and then you hear, oh, so-and-so got divorced, and you sit there and go, well, you're not surprised. I don't know if that's a good thing or a sad thing, because did that mean that they just totally gave up, or they didn't want to keep pursuing and working at it? And marriage isn't easy. Marriage is hard.
It's very, very hard, Thomas. And one of the things I can honestly say, it's probably both and not either or. And I'm gonna tell you why I say that. I've been in certain circumstances where it is so toxic, it's better for y'all to just leave this life. Y'all need to separate because y'all gonna kill each other. It's bad. I mean, when I say it's bad, I characterize it like, okay, so it's stage 4 cancer. And right now for you, death is imminent. The question is when. Now, do I go in advocating for that? No, I'm like any other, in that respect, a physician. I'm going to do my level best to help you fix it. But here's the challenge. Do people come back from stage 4 cancer? Absolutely, they do. Is it difficult? It is absolutely the most difficult and trying situation, both for the modern medicine and for the patient themselves. It has to be almost a perfect storm for that to happen, and a lot of miracle working stuff going on that, quite frankly, is just out of your control. That's not something that you can gamble on. And so I often tell people that when you find that there is a challenge with communicating, stop right there and say, listen, if we cannot communicate, if you've gone a whole year and you can't communicate effectively about a situation, you need help. Don't go 10 years and now that costs you the marriage, because that's stage 1 at that point. Stage 1 is that this issue is not getting resolved and we're getting increasingly frustrated. So here's what I'm going to suggest. Stop it. Stop and say, listen, I got to fix this. And what I honestly think that what happens in most homes is that our culture ain't helping. Like, you got people working 2, 3, 4 jobs, and you got, folks, single moms, God bless them. They're trying to do all of it. And you just don't have the margin to make the adjustment. And I am a huge advocate of doing less, taking stuff off your plate, itemizing things, what is real priority, and saying to yourself, do I really need this? And then asking yourself what is priority and giving 100% to that until you can effectively, in a healthy way, add more things to your plate. But yeah, I think it's both and I think that unfortunately therapists, counselors, coaches, we all get to see people who are, in our opinions, beyond that kind of place. But I never go into it. I don't think there are very many situations that if you desire to put in work, you can't turn that around. I really don't. Even the unpardonable sin of adultery or whatever within the confines of relationship. I've coached too many people who've turned that around because they decided we want the relationship over the offense. So
what's the meat and potatoes of the book? I mean, what were you not seeing?
Yeah.
As a new blended family, what was it that you weren't seeing? And, I'm the same way. I mean, I was one of those people too, where I didn't see any blended family books. I mean, we have 2 of our kids wrote a coloring book called 10 Tips on How to Survive Your Parents' Divorce, because
love it.
They didn't see,
love it.
They didn't see any, books on it.
Yeah.
How did you ensure or what is the roadmap within the book?
So the roadmap, really, the book is broken down into 3 sections. So for those of you all who are jumping in on IG, good to see you, Leander. Good to see you guys. Coach Bruce, appreciate y'all for jumping in. Do me a favor, share this out. I'm talking with Thomas Maloney. He's interviewing me on his podcast, actually. And it's about blended family.
Blendingfamily.com. Blendingfamily.com.
Blendingfamily.com. Thanks, bro, for putting that out there. But one of the things that we did is that we wanted to map out, if we look back over our life of 19 years together, we had to ask ourselves the question, if there was a formula, what was it? And we identified a couple of things that were key for us. And I am not here saying that everything fits everybody. I'm the kind of guy that says, I'm going to take a grain of truth out of what you just said and make it work for me. Like, I will listen. You get what I'm saying? So I don't want, for example, this book is not necessarily going to fit everybody's model situation. But what it does is it lays out principles that if you take a grain of truth out of that, if you take a principle. If you take one step, it'll get you a step closer than where you were prior to reading this book. So I want to put that out there because a lot of people will dismiss any kind of quote self-help book or whatever the case may be because they think, well, that's just ego and it doesn't work for that. But what I like to suggest is that we came together and we recognize that in a blended family, most people are coming, well, in any family, you don't have to be blended. I also submit that all families are blended. Both of y'all come from two completely different backgrounds in most cases. And so you're going to have to blend something. But what I recognize for us is that we were two broken or two flawed individuals that came together. We said, I do. That formed a family. And then we spent the rest of our life together trying to blend that. And so what we do is we talk about the process of building a solid family. We break down what broken and what flawed is. That's the part of the book where we just get really self-aware. And I don't think that there are many things that can change for many people without a level of self-awareness going into the equation. You have to recognize emotionally where you are across all platforms at any given time. And you have to say, nope, that's me. Self-awareness is all about being able to call yourself out on your own crap. Not believing your press clippings and saying, listen, I'm not measuring up and I'm self-aware enough to know that has to change. And so we had to come to a conclusion. We're broken. We're flawed. We're not perfect. We've got problems. And I think, unfortunately, when people come together, they let the love cloud kind of cloud the fact that y'all got some problems. And if you don't address them, the wedding day is going to be over. Honeymoon is going to be over. And I promise you, when that cloud sort of dissipates, you're going to have some real work to do that you may not be ready really to implement. So that we take care of and broke. And then in the family section of the book, we break down what families look like, the dynamics of people's families. Everybody comes from a different what they would call family. There are people who, because of the way they grew up, they look at family very different. So we talk about what it looks like to coexist within a unit that you call family. And how do you, from a very practical standpoint, navigate through that? So you really have to go from being self-aware to being sort of aware of your surroundings and aware of what everyone else is doing. And what part do you play on that particular team and how do you make that work? And then in the blended section, we just really kind of lay out, and we've got some workbook type stuff in there where we begin to just challenge people to say, listen, here's the deal. Blending takes work, but you're not supposed to lose yourself in it. I'm going to say that again. Blending takes work, but you're not supposed to lose yourself in the blending. I'll give it to you this way. Blending and juicing are two different things. When you put something in the blender and you blend it up, the taste of that is very different than that of something that goes in a juicer. A juicer causes something to become so one that you can't taste one from the other, but blended is not that way.
That's beautiful.
Blended, you can distinctly taste what's in that mix, because it's not so mixed up that it becomes the same thing. And I think that that's what people are striving for in blended families, is that we all become the same. And I'm telling you right now, there's too much value in what everyone brings to the table for you to settle for all of us being the exact same. That's boring.
So I want to bring up the question. And that is, again, let's say either in your past situation, Glenn, or to your listeners and my listeners and all of our now listeners, if you have a couple and each of them have kids, they're dating, and the kids don't get along, do you continue dating, or do you still continue on, get married, and hope that because now you're under one roof, that it's all going to work out?
Well, let me say on the front end, I think the latter is suicide. I think it's a matter of time. If you ignore the fact that the kids are not getting along, I think you're setting yourself up. I really do. And I've seen that. And this is just not what I think. This is what I've seen over time. People who ignore, again, we're talking about being self-aware. There is a reason why they don't get along. And I think that, unfortunately, Let's go back for a quick second. At the root of all divorce is selfishness. I don't care what anybody says. Somebody didn't get their way and they decided I'm done, or both. And when I say selfishness, most cases it's rooted in I want to be happy. I want this. I want that. Or I'm not getting this. Or I'm not getting that. And so therefore I deserve, like all these I's is at the root of divorce. And I would argue this with most people. Like at this point, I don't care how you slice that. And I'm not saying it's necessarily good or bad. It's just is. But what I will caution people is that if you blow past the obvious, I think you're going to pay for that on the back end. And I think that there is merit for slowing down and checking in. I think there's a huge advantage to you as a couple, as a future family, to slow down and really do a gut check and figure out what is going on. After you do a real live family gut check and you figure out what is at the basis of all of this, then there's some decisions that need to be made. I'm not necessarily saying, because now we're talking how old are they? What's the situation? That's a loaded question. I'd have to get in and dissect because everyone would be very different. But I think in general, if you flat out ignore the fact that your kids don't get along and you're trying to get married at some point, I think you're asking for problems. You're actually inviting it. Now, will that work? Only time will tell. For some people, maybe they plowed through it. But I'm of the sort that marriage should be forever. I'm of the opinion that it should be done until death do you part. And if I'm going to invest in something that's that long term, brother, I promise you, I can take 3 months off and say, what's going on with our kids? What is really happening? And that's just my perspective. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of, where I come down on that particular issue.
All right. Let's talk about MAPS. What is your MAPS organization?
So MAPS stands for Marriages and Parenting Successfully. And one of the things that I recognize, obviously being married twice and having an unsuccessful marriage, I know what an unsuccessful marriage looks like. My wife knows what 2 of them look like. And we're very, very vocal, very transparent about the fact that we put this group together specifically to train people and to add value to people who are either in a marriage, they're getting ready to get married, they're divorced and they want to be married, or they are parents, whether they're married parents, single parents, co-parents, godparents, grandparents. I mean, if you're a parent, this community is for you. And we do specific things in this community. It's designed to help you increase and grow your skill sets when it comes to doing relationships in a healthy way. For example, I'll give you an example. Communication is a skill set. And the reason why many people are not good at it is because they've not honed it. And so it's more than talking. That's a part of it. But it's also at the base level, and we all know this, communication is based on transmitting and receiving. You can transmit or talk or run your mouth all day long. And if this person doesn't receive it because either they're closed or they speak a different language or they've checked out or you're saying it over and over and over again and they're just done, then therefore they've not received it. And so therefore the question is, how do you get them to open back up so that they can receive? That's a skill set. And if you can't effectively get someone to open up, they'll never receive you because they're not open to do that. And what we do is we go through some personal development trainings and all kinds of things. We read books, things that I've gone through over the years. We bring people in to speak to the group, professionals, things like that in those particular areas. But the goal is really, man, to help people build and grow the skill set that's needed to do any relationship in a healthy way.
Oh, I know what just came to mind. Breakfast with the Brooks. Tell us about that. I think that's just brilliant.
So Breakfast with the Brookses is a live stream that my wife and I do every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That'd be super early for you guys, but 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, she and I come on. We're only normally on for about 30 minutes, but we're there just to give live, unsolicited wisdom, things that we've navigated through, and also just to flat out take questions and help people sort of wrap their mind around different things. Most often we have some kind of subject that we're talking about, and that kind of, you know, sets the stage for it. But we do that live just to show up. We've been doing it for a year, a little bit more than a year now, just to show up live every Saturday morning to help people sort of wrap their minds around it. But yeah, that's on my business page, facebook.com/Glenn P. Brooks Jr. LLC.
How did that even start? What was the, hey, was it breakfast one morning? Hey, honey, you want to do this live and have people watch us eat? And
no, it's funny. Breakfast denotes the time of day. We're not normally eating, because that's a terrible mix if you go live and you're eating. I'm the guy that comes from the school. Look, do me a favor, eat first and talk later. I don't need to see what's in your mouth. That's just nasty. So no, the breakfast, we may have a cup of coffee, because I promise you, you know, that's early. But what we did was, Thomas, we recognized that Sheree and I's thing as a couple, on Saturday mornings, we generally lay in the bed and just talk. And we'll get up 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. We're just laying there. And before we know it, it's 9 o'clock and we've talked about every single thing imaginable. And there was a period of time that we did that every week, probably for years. Like that was just our thing. Mm-hmm. And it was organic. It wasn't anything we planned. It wasn't like date morning or anything like that. We just found it really, really soothing and fun to catch up on Saturday mornings. And sometimes we'd go out, sometimes we talk. So I told her one day, I said, babe, you know what? We really need to bring people in on some of these conversations, because I think we'd be sharing some pretty dope stuff that can help some people. And if they could use it, then God bless them. So yeah, that's how that platform kind of started.
I think it's brilliant. I mean, it's very inviting. It's like you said, it's very relaxing, and you never know what kind of organic conversations that, you know, the two of you are talking about, and somebody else might go, yeah, hey, honey, we were just talking about that. Yeah. They were talking about that.
It happens all the time. It happens all the time, and we just love it. So, you know, we're coaches at our heart, and we like helping. That's the real deal. And it's an opportunity, obviously, for people to discover maps if they want to go deeper. They certainly, you know, but we don't talk about maps for 30 minutes. We just chop it up with folks and help
them. How can people get a hold of you, Glenn?
www.thecrcoach.com. The C stands for constant. The R stands for relationship. Coach.com. You can find out everything that we're doing, everything from maps to, we've got a cruise that we're taking a bunch of people on. We're calling it the My Family Rocks Cruise 2018 in October. And we've got about 30 people or so signed up so far that's wanting to go. And really, we're just trying to take families away. Our theme for this year for the MAPS community is personal development and fun. And we want to do things centered around that. And so we're taking a group of people. So you can find out that you can buy our books there. You can find out more about, we've written 7 books between the two of us. The first book I wrote is called How to Raise a Man, Not a Mama's Boy. The second one is a sequel to that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to grab it really quickly.
Sure. I'm going to do a little singing and dancing while we're waiting.
Yeah, just really.
Oh, good, you're back, because people don't want to see me sing or hear me sing.
That's crazy. So the second one is Living with a Mama's Boy, learning how to position yourself as his #1 priority. After I did the book, How to Raise a Man, Not a Mama's Boy, I was having mothers saying, you know what, my husband is displaying some of the tendencies of just a man who is checked out. He's a man who feels entitled. He's a man that more than likely was raised without male influence. I mean, he was never made to do things. Things were kind of handed to him or given to him. And as a result, he's picked up these tendencies that, quite frankly, piss a lot of women off once you move into a relationship with them. And they're saying, can you help them? And then I wrote a book called How I Got My Son Back. And this was A Man's Journey to Fatherhood. This is the book where I talk about, you know, my relationship with my ex-wife. I call her my former wife or my co-parent, and how we got there, and what I needed to do to turn it around. And that was one of my whys in terms of making us work. I remember sitting down for 45 minutes at a Denny's in Annapolis, Maryland, and basically telling her I screwed our relationship completely up. And 98.9% of what went down is my fault. I don't know how to fix it. I'm sure it's not fixable. I just want you to know that you're not crazy. And I want to figure out a way to change that about me so that I could hopefully earn your respect and be able to, at some point, primarily care for our son. And he was 3 then. And by the time he was 12 years old, he came to live with us full time because she called me up and said, it's your turn. And we've worked over the years, literally building that relationship. So it's a pretty amazing journey. And I grew up. It was my journey literally to fatherhood. And I like to tell people I didn't become a man until I was in my 30s.
How old is he now?
My son, he's 24 now. Yeah. I didn't become a man until I was in my 30s, brother. It took me a long time to grow up. And so that was the third book that I wrote. And then the fourth book is called Managing Students Through Relationships, Not Rules. And I spent a couple of years driving a school bus, actually, working for a nonprofit. Things got real tight financially. So I picked up a gig driving for a school. And for 2 years, I poured into students. And that was something that I was always passionate about. And I won all kinds of awards and stuff. And I chalked a lot of my anecdotes down. And actually, I go into public schools now as a part of what I do, and do staff development, particularly for bus drivers, on how do you manage a bus of 100 kids and help them do what needs to be done. But you do it through relationship. You don't do it through rules. And that's the premise of that book. And then the last one, Marriage Works. When you do the work, 5 things you need to know. Sheree and I both wrote that together. And we outlined 5 things that if you get a hold of them and if you work on just those 5 things, I promise you there's no reason why your marriage can't work. And then obviously you brought me on to talk about broken to family to blended. And all of that you can get at thecrcoach.com. And we'd love for you to check us out and see what it is that we got. All my Instagram, Facebook, everything, you can find me there. So you don't have to hunt and peck to find me.
Hashtag, we all need some help.
I promise you, brother, you cannot get to any place of significance by yourself. It can't happen. If you can get there by yourself, I'm going to submit you've not gone very far.
Glenn P. Brooks Jr., thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for the invitation, and looking forward to catching up soon on social media for sure.
Well, you're one of those people that are just, in my opinion, doing it right, serving others, you and your family. Maybe I think I'm home alone this weekend, so maybe I'll be having breakfast with the Brooks.
Bro, come on with us. Come on. We'd love to have you chime in, and I appreciate it. Again, if anybody wants to find out more about me, just go to thecrcoach.com, www.thecrcoach.com, and you follow me on Instagram. I'm at Glenn P. Brooks Jr. And on Facebook, I'm at Glenn P. Brooks Jr. LLC. And love to see you guys soon. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks, Glenn. Thank you.